to the Kofu Mama Show. Today we have a very special guest. We have Katie Corbett. She holds a master's degree in community health education and is a certified health education specialist. And get this, she is a busy mom of 8. And then get this, she homeschools them. Oh my goodness. Katie, how are you today? It's so nice to have you on the show.
Thank you so much for having me on, Sarah. I love what we're going to talk about is probably my favorite thing in the world to talk about. So I'm thrilled to be here. So thank you so much for having me.
I love that. I mean, I love that I'm sure you're passionate about this and you want to share your knowledge, and having 8 kids is just an incredible thing. Only having 2 right now, I can't even imagine what that is like. So as a mother of 8, have all your children been homeschooled, and what was your motivation for homeschooling them?
We had started, my kids started out in private school, but then as we started having more and more, I was like, this really isn't economical. And so I took about a year and a half. My oldest was going into 2nd grade. So during her 1st grade year, I just started researching homeschool really. So I kind of thought of it as my contribution to our home economy, really. I wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. And I thought if I could do that, that would alleviate quite a big chunk of money, back into our budget instead of spending it on private school. And so my husband was all for it. Even when we first got married, before we even had children, he mentioned homeschooling. And so that was in 2000 is when we got married. And so then I was like, oh no, they're going to go to school like that. I'm not that crunchy. I don't think I could homeschool anyway. It was not on my radar. And then it really took me a while to research and make sure. I think my biggest fear was that I was going to not set them up successfully for their career or long term. And I didn't want that burden on me. I felt like, okay, what if I screw up and they have no marketable skills, and that's my problem now? They're going to live in my basement forever. That's scary to me. So I just felt, like it felt so big, so heavy, and such a burden. But as I was researching it and kind of coming across all these studies that, the relationships you're closer with them. And then really the students get to learn how to, they can have interests and hobbies and time, and they can pursue things that they wouldn't be able to. And then learning more too, like colleges are actually looking for homeschoolers because they are more motivated learners, and they have a little bit more of they don't really need to be, how would you say it? Like micromanaged in the classroom. They kind of like know what's expected of them, and they can take, so they're more responsible. And so learning all that, I was like, okay, I'll try it and I'll see. But it really happened for my own benefit. I was just started out blogging, and This Old Schoolhouse magazine, which is a homeschool magazine, they had a program going on. It was called This Old Schoolhouse Review Crew. And so they would send us curriculum, and we could use it and review it and then share it with our readers. And it was our very first year homeschooling, but I had gotten so many different curriculums sent to us so we could check them out and review them. So I almost feel like we were, kind of like treated to stuff like we would not have ever been able to be exposed to. And so that started our homeschool journey. And to this day, some of the stuff I do still use with our kids, but I feel like I was able to be exposed to a lot of different methods and curriculum right out of the gate. And it was wonderful for us, because then I didn't feel bad either if like, oh, this doesn't work for us, let's try this one. And then, okay, this one works, we'll stick with this, but that one doesn't work. And that was one thing I loved about the homeschool philosophy too, was if you had a kid that was out of the box and maybe wasn't really meant to sit at a desk for 8 hours a day, and instead of them being punished, you could really curtail or you could really design something specific for that specific child and really make it for them so that learning wasn't a burden or they weren't getting in trouble for maybe not fitting in the mold. And I loved that, and so every year I always say, okay, I'll do it for this year. And then the next, now 11 years later, it's like, okay, we're still going strong, with this whole homeschooling thing. But some moms that I talked to, they knew, though the baby was in my womb and I would read to them and I just knew I was going to homeschool. And I feel like that wasn't on my radar at all. Really, it came from a financial thing. But now I couldn't imagine not homeschooling them because it really is part of the fabric of our lives and just the way we live, as opposed to, I know some homeschoolers have it like, okay, this is the schoolroom. These are the desks you sit at. We school from 8 to 3. Like we don't do that. We more live our lives and have education woven in. And I can do that too because we have so many kids. And I'll go into more detail too, but it works for us better to have it just be a fabric throughout our whole day as opposed to, certain times, because I don't think I would be able to get to each child in each grade if I had to be so rigid and regimented.
I see. So do you have, I know you mentioned about having a routine at 8 to 3. Do you have your own type of routine every day?
I do. Yeah, I do. So I noticed, we have, my youngest is 2 years old and then my oldest is 19. So my oldest 2 daughters have graduated now. One just graduated just this past May. So really, when I have 3 teenagers right now, actually 4, but the one wasn't in school this past year. But I always let my teenagers sleep in the morning because I had read studies that teenagers really need extra time in the morning. They really need to catch up on some sleep, or not even catch up on sleep, but they just require a lot of extra sleep during a certain time period of their lives. And they found that teenagers, if allowed to sleep in longer, actually are in a better mood. School goes better for them. So they naturally sleep in. So, but my little guys, they're up so early. I don't know if you probably have that too. So they're up by 6 a.m. So what I do is try to take advantage and with my little guys, that's when we're doing reading. So this past year, like we're going into the new school year, but the year we just finished up, I had a kindergartner and I had a 2nd grader and a 4th grader and a 7th grader. And my little guys, well, I also had a 9th grader and then a senior as well. But the little guys really needed more one-on-one, especially when you're nailing down the phonics and the reading skills and the beginning math skills. They need you more. So, but they were awake so much earlier and they're calmer in the morning and they're in better moods in the morning. So I usually get up before them. I try to have a morning routine for my own self-care. I like to get up and have quiet time for myself. And then usually around 8, I'll give them breakfast and I will just start their school. And when they're little, you really need to take a long time because they don't have the attention span. And the lessons really can be 20 minutes for a phonics and reading lesson. And then, 20 minutes for a quick math lesson. But then throughout the day, like that's not the only thing they're doing, but they can handle that. And I always feel like if they can get the 3 R's, the reading, writing, and arithmetic in, everything else is kind of gravy, because through life, you're going to have to know how to read. You're going to have to know how to do arithmetic at least. And then everything else. So when days are crazy, when the baby's sick and, maybe the teenagers need to, go to the doctors or the dentist or, what I mean? Life gets chaotic. I know that at least we did the reading, writing, and arithmetic first thing in the morning so that whatever could happen or gets in the way, we've had that much time. Right. So I do that with them. And then at 9 a.m., I get all the children. We meet at our dining room table and we use a curriculum called a Gentle Feast. And it goes from kindergarten up through 12th grade. But it's kind of like our backbone because she writes out lesson plans. She gives you book lists. So, and then she also divides it up by time period. So even though so we're going into we're going to be studying American history this year. And so even my high school kids will study American history. My middle schoolers will study American history. My elementary school kids will study American history, but they're just going to get it at different levels that are age appropriate for them. Okay. But then when I'm planning a field trip, or if I do a read aloud book, or if we do an audio book, if we're going somewhere in the car, I can make it based on American history, and it'll benefit everybody, regardless of what level they're on, So that's how I try to make my life easier as far as whatever we're going to study. I try to make it so everybody is kind of at least studying the same topic. So even with science, everybody will do chemistry, right. And obviously they're going to get it at different levels, and then math is on their own level, and then reading, but like our read alouds then will be about American history this coming year, different books on that, but it'll supplement whatever it is that they're learning about at their level.
I'm so blown away by what you're telling me right now. Like, I literally have no words to describe. I can't even imagine okay, let's say you're studying American history, right? But then you have your 2-year-old running around, and then you also have, say, a 7th grader, a 4th grader. You have so many kids, I can't even remember exactly how old each of them are. But how do you divide your attention? And is it something like they've grown up knowing how to self-play a lot or self-manage? Is that how it works? Or how does this? Please tell me more.
So my 2-year-old, it's a little harder when they're 2. 2 years old, I feel like is they're really hard. That is the hardest age for me. I have 3 teenagers, or 4 right now. I would rather have 4 teenagers than a 2-year-old. They're so illogical, terrifying. But
I'm there now.
Right? So the 2-year-old is a challenge. So I have to be proactive and make sure there's things there for them to do. Now, my little guy, he sees his older brothers, doing school, so I'll make sure if they're at the table. And what I try to do is if I'm doing, I could set them both up with math. And sometimes, especially like kindergarten, 2nd grade, some of the math overlaps a bit, especially in the beginning with the 2nd graders. It gets a little bit more advanced for my 2nd grader once they start multiplication and those types of things. But even math, I can overlap a bit with the kindergartner. So they could be doing it at the same time, and I could just do the lesson really quick with my kindergartner, and then go ahead and let him get started on what he needs to do, and then go ahead and work with my 2nd grader, and then kind of go back and forth. Like if they need me to read a question to them, I can. Like I'm right there, but they know, I guess, maybe the layout of their school, where they kind of know what to do, as they get into, we use Saxon math for math. So like as they
could you tell us what Sax is?
Saxon. Saxon? SAXON.
Oh, Saxon. That's a type of workbook, or?
Yeah. Well, it's a curriculum. It's a math curriculum.
Okay.
So that's what we use for math. And I love it because you don't have to write out the lesson plan or invent anything. It's done for you, and it'll tell you exactly in bold letters exactly what you're supposed to say. And so you literally have to just read, okay, today we're going to learn about a recipe, and we're going to make applesauce. And so, do you know what I mean? And then it'll tell you exactly what you need to say. And like, this is a 1 cup measuring cup, and we can put the apples in here when we chop them up. And then we're going, and it'll tell you exactly what to say. So you don't really have to think. It's very thorough though. And I actually found out about that because that's what the kids used in the private school that they were going to. They made a homeschool version of it. And I felt like, okay, if this didn't work out, I could just put them right back in where they were, and I wouldn't have felt like they missed anything. So I just stuck with that. And that's, we still use it because I love it. It's a spiral curriculum. So it gives you it'll introduce a concept. It'll have them practice a couple problems based on that concept every day. And then it'll spiral around and go a little deeper. It's very thorough though. And I love it. So even for that, in the mornings, my second grader would have to put a thermometer outside and let it sit there. And then he'd have to read the thermometer and then graph the temperature. But my little guys, seeing him do it, they know it's a thermometer. And then my kindergartner figured out, I showed him what my other guy was doing and how to tell the temperature and stuff like that. And so now he can, but it was just natural because it was just part of what he was doing anyway. So a lot of that happens, especially then as you have more and more kids, they're really just listening to you and learning along with the bigger kids, and just getting these ideas and concepts. So that's always helpful too, because then as they come up, they're like, oh, I know how to tell the temperature. And then I could do a couple questions with them and then just get them started on their actual work page that they need to do. So, as you have more kids, it actually got a little bit easier for the younger kids because they see the older kids doing things and it makes it a little easier. But back to the 2-year-old, I have to make sure I have things to do for him that maybe aren't available other times of the day, only when school is happening, so that they're interesting to him and they're special. And so it's not something that he could just go and get any other time other than when we're doing school. So that they're, either blocks that only come out when it's school time or Play-Doh. We have little math manipulatives that we just have to use anyway for the younger guys for their math. So that those will come out and then he could play with them. And as he's playing with them, it's so easy to say, oh, this is orange. This is black, this is white, this is yellow. And just he's just learning his colors just by playing and us just saying like, oh, what, can you make a tower? How many blocks did you use? And it's, but it's keeping him entertained. He's playing, but it's not like rigid and structured and like, okay, we're going to learn how to count today and we're going to learn our colors today and our shapes today. It's not like that. It's just kind of like, oh, look at this. Can you find the teddy bear or can you find what sound does this animal make? And it's just natural for him, So, but really keeping him occupied and out of trouble and content, I think is probably my biggest hurdle. But there are pockets of time where he's just naturally quiet. If he usually still naps, and I'll have a 2-hour window. So if there's something in particular that I have to teach that might require a lot of focus, or if we're going to do a science experiment, I might want to do it then, just so it's goes off without a problem. Or if I want to do a read aloud, maybe I'll choose then so he's not interrupting and wanting to sit on our laps or, get the book. Or so it really, it just depends on what's coming up that day that we need to do. But I know like, okay, I'll have this window of quiet and I'll do this activity when he's asleep. And in the meantime, the rest of the day, he can just kind of play on the floor or sit at the table with us and color or play with the blocks or whatever we have that's special for that time period.
I'm just thinking about in this world now, how do you I don't know if you expose them to technology, but how does that work into your homeschooling?
So they do, especially I feel like, when all my kids were little, we didn't have TV, we didn't have cable. We were so good. And then I feel like once we had a few that were like teenagers and then they started driving and have a phone so that I know you're safe when you're out. I feel like a lot of our standards had to lower a bit. And so, they do. And I have to really be very, like I'll let them watch a show, but I always say that guys make it like they love watching these people on YouTube and it drives me crazy. I'm like, you cannot watch this. Like they're not doing anything that's even remotely interesting, like this is not okay. So I'll let them watch something like How It's Made. I have my oldest 3 are girls, and then my youngest 5 are boys. So the boys are very, very physical, very kinesthetic learners kind of thing. So for them, if they sit around a lot and watch TV, their behavior is not good. They really do not listen after a while. So I really have to be pretty rigid about how much screen time they get, but they do get some, like if that's just like, yeah. So, but I do try to make it. And the nice thing is where we live in Pennsylvania. And so our property, we have woods and a nice yard. We bought the house because of the yard. So the boys could run and stuff in it. Amazing. And so, yeah. And so we try to get them outside as much as possible and then have things out there for them to do. Like we put in a zip line, we put in hammocks so that they could go outside and read if they want, or they have swings they could swing on. We tried to make it so that they'd want to be out there. We have a trampoline too. We kind of raged against it because we were worried about the safety of it. But then once the lockdowns and COVID hit, my husband came home with one. He's like, if we're going to be here, we got to do something with them that's going to keep them moving and keep them outside. So we wound up breaking down and getting a trampoline. But we have anchors in our day where it's like, okay, we got to head outside. Let's head outside and we'll just run in the yard, or let's do some laps in our driveway, or just, burn off some energy so we could focus better. But yeah, screen time is definitely something we have to have boundaries on, because they would watch it all day. If I just let them, they would just sit there all the time and just be on a screen. So
of course,
it's unfortunate, but it's one of those things you have to battle.
Especially nowadays, it's really, really tough to battle. I mean, I struggle with that as well with just the two. Well, not the baby yet, but the older one. So you mentioned COVID. So COVID's forced many parents to also homeschool, but maybe not as, specific or not as specialized as you've done it. What are some of the best practices that you can share to our listeners?
I think, I feel bad for the parents that had to do like the cyber school from home onto a classroom where the child is on the screen all the time and have to be logged into the computer. Right. And my nieces and my nephew had that happen. And I was like, they were so frustrated, like, I can't wait for them to go back to school because this is terrible. And like, that's not really homeschooling. I mean, yes, they're home and yes, they have to log in to be school, but you have no freedom as far as personal choice goes. You're not able to say, look, you're getting wiggly. Let's go outside and play. And then we'll attack this subject later. Or, this worksheet is boring. Let's see if we can find a book on the topic and read a living history book instead of doing this, or, you kind of lose that freedom and the flexibility of what real homeschooling could be. And I think a lot of people maybe were forced into it and it didn't work for them because it was like a fragmented sample of what homeschooling could be. Now, some kids thrived and they loved the not having the peer pressure and not having to, they were home and it was just more comforting. And that was awesome. And they did get more one-on-one time. I've heard parents say, I'm glad because now they have the confidence, like, oh, I saw what they were learning. I can totally do this. I think sometimes too, you feel like, I don't know if I could do it because it feels so special, or like teachers just have like a magical secret and that's how they teach. But like once they realize like, oh, they're just reading from the same book, the same curriculum book that I have, and the words are in bold, and I could do that. I don't need to pay $8,000 a year. I totally could do this. And then we have flexibility to go on, travel, do field trips when we want, that kind of thing. So, I feel bad for a lot of parents that had that experience where they're home, but the children were on the computers all the time. Like I feel like if it was me, maybe I would not have known any different. Like I would have just thought that was normal. But I always encourage, like, just pull them out and just actually homeschool, because then at least they're still home with you, but then you're not forced to sit there while they're trying to log in and listen to the teacher and do all this extra work. And, you can actually really just homeschool them and do it. And probably have a better outcome and a better experience that way. So that was kind of what I what I told my sister-in-law too, like just they're home anyway. At least if you just homeschool them, you at least have more freedom. You don't have to follow what they're doing and have all the bad attitudes and the frustration from the children because they're having to adapt.
So I was also wondering, so if they're homeschooled, they're not in a classroom environment where they're interacting with, 30 kids in their class and things like that. Do you find that when you're homeschooling, do you actively meet up with other parents so they have other friends, or how do you deal with that?
I do. I find cool moms because I need to get out and be with people. And they just come along with me. But I always made that a point. And even during COVID and stuff like that, I was like, all right, we have to at least screen time with people. If we can't get out and see them, let's at least make sure we can be face to face with your friends and chat with them so that you're not feeling isolated and lonely. We've always done either a once a week co-op, twice a week co-op, or, when we first moved to Pennsylvania, we would do a once a month co-op. But right now what we do is a once a week fine arts co-op because I'm not crafty and I'm not artsy. So I found, or musical. So I found a really awesome homeschool fine arts co-op, and we go once a week, and it's for the whole day. So from 8 to 3, they're at this co-op. But what I loved about it was it was music and dance. They could do instruments. They could take private voice lessons. They got drawing classes, pottery classes, painting classes, cooking classes, like you name it. They had the opportunity to take all these different classes, and I don't know if I said dance too, but gymnastics. And I was like, I love this because with 8 kids, if they were going to be doing this many different activities through the week, I'd be in the car constantly driving them around to different activities, and the cost would be crazy. Yeah. So on a Friday, which is the end of the week for us anyway, we can go to our fine arts co-op. They get to see all their friends. I get to chat with other adults, which is always exciting, and like bond with some moms. And they get to experience a classroom setting and listen to another teacher and learn how to be in a classroom setting and understand, like, they can't just talk the whole time. And so they kind of learn the etiquette too of being in a public space and having to learn from somebody else and authority that's not just mom. So I like that. I love it. And I feel like they're exposed then to art and literature and, different composers that I wouldn't maybe have known about or have, exposed them to. Because I'm not a musical person. And so I like that opportunity for them to be able to do that. And then we have clubs throughout the week that they go to, a Wednesday night, we do something. And this year we might also, 2 of my boys play flag football. So they do that. So there's so many opportunities. I think almost the end of the spectrum is like, there's so many opportunities. You actually have to scale back and really assess, like, okay, what is my goal for them? And then work backwards from there. Because I think too, sometimes people, especially homeschool moms, especially new homeschool moms, they feel like we have to do everything because I don't want to miss out on anything and harm them or not allow them to have this life experience. But then the mom winds up burning out. And then she'll be like, well, homeschooling really wasn't for us. It was too exhausting. Right. And it's like, well, it wasn't homeschooling. It was just, maybe she didn't take into consideration her own needs or her own personality. Right. And so she burned out, you know what I mean? And so it's like, you really have to kind of consider your personality, your needs, and your kids' personalities too. I have kids that are extroverts that they love to be out and about and doing things all the time. And then I have other kids that are like, do we have to leave the house? Can we just stay home? And so it's like this balance too of like understanding your kids' personalities and then, deciding like, okay, would this help them? Would this really drain us? Are we going to enjoy this? Or is this really going to be something that we kind of dread every single week? And then
feel
really
like you have to make so many decisions all the time. Is there something that you is there some way that you kind of manage that? I feel like you have to decide, 8 kids, 8 different interests, 8 different types of
Mhm.
people, and then you also have a husband. How do you balance everybody's interests, and how do you like find ways to make those decisions like without having to waver
Right.
between?
So what we did when we first started out was we created a homeschool vision statement for our family, my husband and I. Like, what is our goal? What do we want from them at the end of this?
Mhm.
Do we want them to be like, what kind of adults do we want to have here? And we really kind of thought of them as like we were growing adults. We weren't raising kids. We were trying to raise them into adults. So we really kept in mind the end game, and then we talked about, okay, what are our values? Do we care if we want to do stuff all the time? We could, but how is dinner time for us important to be able to connect as a family? If that's important to us, then, and we say that, like, as part of our family vision statement, like, we'll meet together every day for dinner so that we can have a time for refreshment and reconnecting, and being able to tell dad all about how our school day went, anything interesting that we learned about. And we want to have a time for that every day towards the end of every day. So if that is something that's in our vision statement, and to keep my husband in the loop, then being involved in a lot of activities and being out, and running around and not being home during that dinner time hour would be exactly the opposite of what our vision and our goals are. So it sets up like a filter for you. And then you can think too, like, okay, what am I really good at that I really see that maybe my kids, have a special gift or ability in, and maybe they got that from me. Or, for example, 2 of my boys are very, very mechanically inclined. They love motors, and they love, any kind of engineering. And I think they get that definitely from my husband. And so you think about, okay, what are their strengths? And then what do I want to be able to opportunity wise, be able to have for them to be able to do? And you could look at your life that way too, and then just start planning around your own strengths and your own personality and your own needs, knowing that kids will kind of adapt, but then you can kind of start to consider them too in the whole process. But I'd
Mhm.
say start with the parents, and then figure out, like, well, okay, what's your vision? And then you can consider, like, okay, well, what are you good at? Like, if I was an amazing artist and I knew how to throw pottery down and do all that, like that, we would just do that at home. I wouldn't feel like, oh, we have to go to a fine arts co-op for them to learn it.
Right.
But I love science. And so for me, doing science experiments at home, that is not a problem for me at all.
Wow.
So we're not going to go to a more academic co-op, because I can do that here, but we'll do a fine arts co-op, right? But I
Mhm.
know that because I know my own strengths and my own personality. And I can handle a once a week co-op.
Right.
It's tiring at the end of the day, but it won't burn me out. I know some moms that is too much. They
Mhm.
already have a full plate. And so to think about having to also be out the door and somewhere by a certain time, and maybe having to help at a co-op, teach a class, and deal with other people's kids, like, to them, that's like the worst thing in the world, right? But like,
Right.
you have to know that then,
Yeah,
because then
definitely.
if you sign up for it and then you're like, oh, homeschooling's the worst. It's like, well, it might not have been homeschooling, but maybe you didn't think of
Exactly.
yourself in the whole equation too.
So
So
so could you tell us a little more about, what falls under self-care, and what are some tips to be able to create time for your own self-care?
yeah. So the first thing, like you had said, like, there's so many decisions that you have to make, right?
Mhm.
So one of the things I always say is make as many decisions ahead of time that you possibly can. So rather than being reactive, be proactive. And also consider, like, all the ways things can kind of, like, your life can go sideways, and then plan for that too. So
Mm.
that even on crazy days, you're not just blown over. So if you can, like, for me, if a stomach bug hits and I don't have any clean laundry, that is really going to be terrible, because things go bad really quick. And it's not just one kid that's going to get sick. It's going to be 8, so I know I need to stay on top of the laundry, because if one kid comes down with a stomach bug, we're out of commission for a month, So little things like that. And also knowing, okay, I'm going to have some meals frozen in the freezer so that if something crazy comes up, if someone has a last minute, appointment, or we wind up having to go do something that I wasn't planning on, or we're out longer than I thought, we're not hitting like the fast food drive-in lane where we have something nourishing in the freezer, because I know there's going to be days where it's not going to really be possible to put a hot meal on the table, but I have something I can defrost and heat up, and we're still having something that will nourish us. That's not fast food, So it's kind of like thinking of those things. And again, it falls under that, like, what do you want for your children? Some people don't have a problem going to like a fast food restaurant and grabbing dinner like that. Like, for them, that's not a big deal. For me, I can't do that, because I would really struggle with my weight. And so if that was how we ate all the time, that would be detrimental for me, so things like that. Like, again, I know myself, and I know what it takes to kind of make me tick. And I know, okay, having something nourishing that will be healthy for everybody in the freezer for when life gets crazy is a great option for us in our lives. Right. So things like that. So if you can make as many decisions ahead of time like that, go for it, and that'll help with decision fatigue too, with trying to, invent the wheel every single day. I use a thing called e-meals, and they plan a menu every week, and then you can choose if you want to use it or not, but it'll send a grocery list to the store, and then you can just based on what the meals were. And then you can just order your groceries and do it that way. Yeah. And like, this is great, because now I don't really have to worry about like what's for dinner, and it's healthy food, and you can pick like the meal plan style that you like.
Right. You are taking care of all 8 kids by yourself.
Right. Well, I have a husband. Yeah.
I mean, of course you have a husband, but you have no nannies, no nothing. Just you two.
No, it's just me.
I still can't get my head around it. I
I was just talking to my husband today, and I'm like, if I could ever have someone come in, I would just love someone to come clean the bathrooms, because I have 5 boys, and it's like a frat house. It's so gross. Like, oh, I would love someone to just clean, but it's for us for now, it works, but they're not all little. Like, they're not 8 little kids. So I have one is almost 20, one is 17, one is 15, one is 13. So they're not all babies, and so they do help out. Like, that's part of like being here all the time, knowing, okay, well, first too, I did have to lower, like standards for myself. Like, obviously, there's going to be mess sometimes, and not allow it to fluster me or overwhelm me. But I do try to keep it so that it's not so messy all the time where it's chaotic, right? So like we'll have maybe a special time during the day where it's like, all right, we need to clean, like everybody just pick up 10 things and put them away. And then, 8 people picking up 10 things well, my 2-year-old really doesn't help at all. He's dumping things, but like, me and 7 of the kids, we're picking up stuff. It'll get pretty tight, a little bit tidier. And then, I do try to have some systems in place that are just automatic. So when I wake up in the morning, I'll fill the dishwasher with whatever dishes the teenagers happen to use, throughout the night after I went to bed, and I'll make sure like the dishwasher's running first thing in the morning, and then I'll empty it, as soon as it's done. Right. So then any dirty dishes that we have during the day, they can just go in the dishwasher. So like my sink isn't overflowing, because that for me, that annoys me. Dirty dishes kind of, it just feels dirtier, So like, but that's something like that's anchored in my day. So when my tea is boiling, my water is boiling for when I'm making my tea first thing in the morning, I'm loading the dishwasher with the rest of the dishes, right? Like I try to anchor it like, okay, can I get this filled before the tea boils kind of thing, and like just try to get it done. And then laundry is the same thing too. Like this might drive some people crazy, but like I don't fold it right away when it comes out. I'll kind of let a couple loads gather and then I'll fold it all at once.
Whatever works. I mean, you've got 8, I mean, 10 people in the house, 10 people's laundry is insane.
Yeah. So I'll let it accumulate clean, but it's just in a basket. And then I'll watch something that I like watching while I fold it, and that's like a little treat for me because I don't really sit around watching TV. But while I'm folding laundry, I'll either listen to a podcast that I like or I'll watch something, and I'll enjoy it. And it kind of makes the folding laundry go a little quicker, but I'll do that a couple times a week. And then because
you actually have time to do this when, what is everyone else in the house doing? Like
my older kids, usually I'll do it on Wednesday evenings. My husband and the kids, we have church on Wednesday evenings. So they'll go to a youth group activity. So they'll do that. And then my 2-year-old is too little to go. So it's just me and him. Okay. And he'll either just play, like probably in the laundry, or he'll go to bed. And then I could just fold and watch something. So it's kind of like my own little date. It's kind of pathetic in a way, but I love it. I really actually look forward to my Wednesday nights. And so that's what they're doing. My teenagers, they do their own laundry. I said, if you guys know how to work a cell phone, you could totally work a washer and a dryer, and it's a life skill. And I show them how and make sure they get it. But now it's a responsibility thing. Like they know. Good. Oh, I'm running low on my laundry. I have to go do it. I have to make sure I have clean clothes, that kind of thing. And then another thing I do too is I know on Fridays we'll be out of the house most of the day. So I look back and I make sure then, okay, so Thursdays is when I make sure I don't make play dates with anybody on a Thursday because it's busy. I'm busy like finishing up whatever laundry, putting it away, picking out their clothes for Friday. And also I'll order groceries online and then go pick them up. So I make sure we have like food for co-op for lunch on Friday. So I always think like ahead of time, because I know Friday morning trying to get out the door, if I don't have their clothes picked out for them, not the older kids, like the older kids are kind of like, they have to do that themselves. But I'm really kind of talking about my elementary school kids and the younger guys. But, I'll make sure that they have their clothes ready. Their backpacks are all set. So everything's kind of set so that in the morning we're out the door. And then Thursday, I'll make for dinner, maybe we'll have, waffles and scrambled eggs, something like that, because whatever's left over then we can have that Friday morning and they can have a hot homemade meal, instead of something quicker, right. But it's already prepped, right? It's like I made it Thursday, I make extra. So like Friday morning, we're out the door. And then, either Friday could be a crock pot meal or something like that. Like I just try to like make as many decisions ahead of time. So if it's a long day at the co-op and I'm just tired or the kids are really tired, I don't have to think about like, oh goodness, now I have to come home and clean or do all this laundry or cook dinner. It's all done, right? Like, so a little bit of planning for me, I feel like
goes a long way.
Keeps me calmer. Yeah, definitely.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for sharing all of this with our listeners. And I'm still overwhelmed about what you do. You are amazing. Absolutely amazing. So thanks for coming on our podcast. And how can everyone find you?
Oh, I have a business called healthwellnessandchocolate.com. And so you could head over there and check that out. And then also on Instagram, it's Health Wellness Chocolate is my handle. And Facebook too. It's Health Wellness and Chocolate. So.
Amazing. And all you listeners out there, do not forget to follow at Kung Fu Mama Show at Facebook, IG, and our YouTube at Starring Sarah Chang. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. This was so much fun.